Today, New Zealand home price falls accelerate. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, where I've noticed posts covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian and New Zealand flavour. The REINZ came out last week with their report for March 2022, which they say solidifies the changes seen in the market over the past months. As pressure on property prices eases, inventory levels increase, demand softens, and sales activity decelerates. They said there is a pervasive feeling of uncertainty and people are hitting pause, while more stocks make this a favourable market for buyers who find themselves in a position to wait for the right property and negotiate, particularly buyers with their finances lined up. But many are balancing fear of overpaying with an outlook of further interest rate increases. Conversely, sellers are holding out for the right price in a changed market. Of course, REINZ starts on a positive note, saying median prices for residential properties across New Zealand increased 7.9% annually, from $825,000 in March 2021 to $890,000 in March 2022. Moving from February to March, the median price increased a marginal 0.6%, but the seasonally adjusted figure shows a decrease of 4.8%, indicating a weaker price increase than expected moving from February to March. The REINZ House Price Index shows how the market is now reacting quite differently from a few months ago. In fact, the HPI adjusts for differences in the composition of sales each month to give a better idea of overall price movements. The national HPI showed a 2.1% decline in March compared to February, with all but two regions, Otago and Southland, showing declines. The HPI figures also suggest that prices have already been in decline for the last few months, with the national HPI in March down 2.8% compared to 3 months earlier. And more specifically, 1 month and 3 month falls are now registering in a number of areas, with Auckland down 2.4% in the last month and 4.5% over the past 3 months. Wellington registers a significant 4.7% fall in the past month and 6.4% over the past 3 months, and Lower Hutt has dropped 6.4% in the last month. These falls, of course, are offsetting gains through the low interest rate and COVID-stimulated period. With rates set to continue to rise, more falls must be expected. Annual rises, which may look impressive, therefore need to be considered in this light. As ANZ senior economist Miles Workman said in his report on the latest figures, identifying the factors affecting prices such as rising interest rates, tighter credit, and the removal of interest deductibility for investors is pretty straightforward, but gauging the likely timing and magnitude of house price falls isn't so easy. So back to those REINZ numbers. They said that the median residential property price for New Zealand, excluding Auckland, increased 14.1% annually, from $679,000 in March 2021 to $775,000 in March 2022. In March, while there were no new regions with record median prices, Gisborne had an equal high to February 2022, with a median price of $715,000, up 10.9% on March 2022. 15 territory authorities achieved median records. Marlborough is the first region to see negative annual movement in median price since May 2020. The region saw a 0.6% annual decrease from $644,000 to $660,000 in March 2022. And with the exception of Marlborough, all regions saw annual median price growth, but the margin of increase is decreasing as prices ease. Auckland and Wellington had the lowest percentage change, with the median residential property price up 6.7% annually in both. The median price in Auckland was up from $1,125,000 in March last year to $1,200,000, and Wellington rose from $880,000 to $939,300 in March 2022. This is the fourth month Auckland has seen a drop in the rate of increase and the third such drop in Wellington. Manawatu and Wanganui saw the annual rate of increase contract again in March. That's the sixth consecutive decrease in the percentage of annual growth, down from a 37.3% annual increase in September 2021 to a 7.6% annual increase this month. Jen Baird, the chief executive at REINZ, said, "Over the past 3 months, we've seen a shift and the market is now settling into this phase of the cycle. The last 2 years have benefited from an exceptional COVID-19 boost. Following this period of significant activity and growth, prices are easing and the market is returning to a more settled pace. While we continue to see prices increase annually in all but one region, the rate of growth is slowing, sales activity is down, and the median days to sell is up. We're seeing the market moderate as people settle into this phase of the property cycle." The impact of tighter lending criteria, LVRs, and increasing interest rates, coupled with inflation, continue to reduce the pool of buyers who are willing and able to pay market prices. The increase in interest rates over the past months presents one of the greatest impacts to the market. Of course, recently the Reserve Bank increased the official cash rate by 50 basis points more to 1.5%. The double rate hike will do little to alleviate concerns and rather see the market slow further as buyers reassess their ability to meet higher mortgage repayments should the dial be turned up further, tempering their spending. As the market shifts to a new pattern, we note volatility across the regions. The data shows variations across regions and TAs within these regions. Last month we saw strong prices in Otago, Southland and Canterbury. In March, those regions were down, a reflection of what's happening across the country. House prices tend to be more sticky when decreasing than increasing, which is what we are seeing now. While market sentiment has quickly shifted, vendors are slower to adjust their price expectations as demand drops. Vendors tend to choose to wait longer to sell their property rather than sell below those expectations. Those who must sell often have to drop their price to meet demand. That tends to be the general experience at this stage of the property market cycle, where the market power is leaning towards buyers. Across New Zealand, the number of residential property sales decreased 33.5% in March 2022, from 10,151 in March 2021 to 6,752. And month on month, there was a 17.7% increase in sales counts from February across New Zealand, but the seasonally adjusted figures show a decrease of 5.2% from February to March. Adjusting for what typically happens over this period, March was weaker than expected. The sales count for New Zealand, excluding Auckland, decreased 28.6% annually from 6,138 to 4,385. And with the exception of Tasman and Marlborough, all regions saw an annual decrease in the number of sales. Tasman had its highest monthly sales count since November 2020, with an increase of 15.7% from 70 to 81. And Marlborough saw the number of sales increase 8% from 75 to 81. The regions with the greatest annual percentage decrease in sales volumes were the West Coast, which decreased 48.7% annually from 78 to 40, Auckland, which decreased 41% from 4,013 to 2,367, and Gisborne, that decreased 38.9% annually from 54 to 33, and the region's lowest sales count in a March month since records began 30 years ago. Waikato, which decreased 38.8% annually from 996 to 610, was the region's lowest sales count in a March month since 2014. And March saw 1,333 properties sell by auction, with auctions falling from 33.5% of sales in March 2021 to 19.7% in March this year. The percentage of sales by auction recorded in New Zealand, excluding Auckland, was 14.5% in March 2022, compared with 21.7% in March 2021. The highest percentage of sales by auction was in Gisborne at 45.5%, that was 15, down from 61.1%, or 33, at the same time last year. And Canterbury was the only region to see an increase in the percentage of properties sold by auction year on year, from 32.7% to 33.2%, the second highest percentage of sales by auction nationally. In Auckland, where auction representation tends to be relatively high, the percentage of sales by auction was 29.4% in March 2022, down from 51.5% the year prior. This trend is reflective nationwide, with 10 of the 16 regions seeing a significant 50% plus drop in the percentage representation of auctions annually. The auction process is an effective way of selling in any market, but the dynamics changed. Through 2021, demand-side pressure caused an urgency to buy now or miss out later, and activity in auction rooms reflected this buyer sentiment. Comparatively, the volume of stock on the market, paired with current market headwinds, has eased competition as buyers step back to consider their options, decreasing the number of sales by auction. And auctions are unconditional and require finance to be confirmed in advance. So with access to finance becoming a barrier to entry for some buyers, a conditional sale becomes the only option. In the current market, quality counts, they said. Buyers are still present and bidding for the right properties in the right price ranges. Sellers with desirable properties or properties ripe for development can still achieve competition at auction, the REINZ concluded. So you can see here the rate of turn is accelerating, and I agree it is uncertain as to how quickly prices will continue to fall and sales ease back further. That, of course, is contingent upon what the Reserve Bank of New Zealand may do next. Some people are saying they may lift the rates again next month. But it seems to me that the die is cast, and those very heady prices and strong sales are a thing of the past. Of course, the question for me is, what about those people who bought in at the top of the market? There was a considerable rise in the number of people highly leveraged. Now, how are they going to fare with higher interest rates and falling values? That could have a very significant spillover effect into the broader economy. And by the way, expect somewhat similar trends to appear in other markets, including those in Australia. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.